The meeting is now live.
So, good evening and welcome to March's Eden District Council Executive Meeting. I'm Councillor Taylor, I'm leader of Eden District Council. And before I start the meeting, I'd like to hand over to Lisa Tremble, the Council's Monitoring Officer, to take us through some announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This meeting is being hosted remotely as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and regulations that were brought in as a result of the Coronavirus Act 2020 allow us to do this, in that the various elements of the regulations are being complied with, in that officers, members and members of the public are still able to participate in our meetings, whilst our current rules of procedure as set out in our constitution continue to apply. This meeting, as you've said, is being live streamed and is also recorded and is available for a period of 21 days after this meeting is finished. Just in relation to housekeeping, I'd remind members please to keep themselves on mute when they are not speaking, and please to turn their cameras on when they are speaking. There is a chat function available to members to use if they wish to indicate they want to speak or report any technical issues. And if we do have any, the chair will adjourn the meeting. There is a 4-hour limit on this meeting, so if we haven't concluded our business in that time, then we will adjourn the meeting to reconvene it at a later stage. Voting tonight will be via unofficial recorded vote, so when your name is called out, please respond verbally if you are for, against, or whether you wish to abstain from the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Tremble. I'm encouraged to ask for apologies for absence agenda item number 1, but there are no apologies for absence, are there? No, so, thank you. So I'd like to introduce all the members of the executive, please, and to bring forward agenda item 3, the declarations of interest at the same time. So when I call your name, please could you respond with present and also make any declarations of interest you may have. Thank you. Councillor Derbyshire.
Present and no interested to declare.
Councillor Greenwood.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Robinson.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Ruddle.
Present and no declarations of interest to declare.
Councillor Sharp.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Tonkin.
Present and no interest to declare.
Thank you. And I have no declarations to make either. So I think we have our cameras off, I think, during the meeting. Thank you. I'd also like to introduce the officers in attendance. Jason Gooding, Interim Chief Executive. Paul Sutton, Interim Director of Corporate Services. Robert Doherty, Assistant Director of Communities. Oliver Schimmel, Assistant Director of Development. Lisa Tremble, Assistant Director Legal and Democratic Services. Nicola Baker, Member Services, and Deborah Garnett, Producer for this meeting. Thank you. Have I missed anybody of that list? No. So agenda item 1, the apologies for absence, we've covered that. Agenda item 2, minutes. I would like to propose that the public minutes, E/115/221 to E/127/221 and confidential minute E/127/221 of the executive held on the 16th of February 2021 be confirmed and approved as a correct record of those proceedings. So if anyone has any corrections, please could you indicate that you wish to speak via the chat function. I believe that nobody does wish to speak. So does this find a seconder? And I see that MR, who could be
Councillor Ruddle, Chair.
Councillor Ruddle. Councillor Ruddle, could you speak, please? Thank you.
I can, Chair. I'll second this.
All right. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Tremble, it says, please can we take a vote, but I believe that, do we need to take it one by one?
You're very welcome to do it by general assent, Chair.
Okay, please can we do that by general assent? And if anybody would just like turn on their camera and speak if they have any. Thank you. So I think that we can take that general assent, yes. So Mrs. Tremble, do we need to confirm that or we just move on?
We can move on to the next item, Chair. I think that is confirmed as everyone is in agreement to those minutes.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 3, declarations of interest, which we've covered at the beginning. Agenda item 4, questions and representations from the public, and there have been no questions or representations received from any member of the public. Agenda item 5, questions from members. There have been no questions or representations received from any member. Agenda item 6, Vereda House refurbishment, procurement. And I would like please to ask Councillor Greenwood to present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Vereda House refurbishment procurement item. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to use a select list procurement process to engage suitably experienced and capable contractors to deliver the refurbishment of Vereda House to net zero carbon standards and to meet the grant conditions of the SALIX funding. This is the recommended procurement approach for the following reasons. The allocation of the SALIX grant funding requires that the procurement of the refurbishment work commences before the end of this financial year, which is the end of this month. If this requirement is not fulfilled, then the grant funding could be withdrawn and the net zero carbon elements of the scheme unaffordable. The SALIX funding also requires the scheme completion by December 2021. A standard procurement approach would extend the procurement timescales adversely impacting the delivery timescales and again could put the SALIX grant funding at risk. The delivery of the net zero carbon elements of the scheme requires technical expertise that is not widely available in the construction market. It is necessary to ensure that contractors involved in procurement process have both the capability and experience to deliver the specific requirements. The furlough arrangements have had a significant impact upon the construction sector. It is necessary to select a list of contractors that have the capacity to deliver project in the timescales required. A bidding process for contractors requires the contractor to incur costs at risk. By using a select list, we can minimise costs incurred by contractors preparing speculative bids without having the necessary capability and experience to be successful. The select list has been drawn up after undertaking a soft market testing exercise to engage with potential contractors and identify those that have both the capability and capacity to deliver the project within the timescales required. This is a standard practice adopted with specialist and time-constrained projects to establish a compliant process and deliver best value. And so the recommendation is therefore to approve the use of the select list procurement process as the best route to engage suitably experienced and capable contractors to deliver the refurbishment of Vereda House to net zero carbon standards and to meet the conditions of the public sector decarbonisation scheme funding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Greenwood. Does anyone have any questions? Please could you indicate through the chat function? Well,
Councillor Sharp, Chair.
Yes, not a question, but a comment. Shall we Shall we do that after the recommendations, sort of? Yes.
You could seek a seconder before you go into comments, Chair.
All right. Okay. Okay. If I could just have a seconder, I'm sure Councillor Sharp could do both, and then she could segue straight into her comment.
Yep, I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Good. And if you'd like to.
Yep. It was just a couple of comments. I just liked the fact in 5.4 that it was to invite tenders from within 60 miles of Penrith to retain economic benefits locally. So I like that bit. And also in 6.1, it was good to see that from the consultation exercise that Councillor Greenwood was talking about, that it demonstrated that the market will respond positively and that the scheme is deliverable. So I just wanted to comment on those two bits. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Sharp. Does anybody else have anything that they wish to say? Well, I'd like to say just how delighted I am with sort of every aspect of this report and the project it describes. So, I mean, a single site has long been an ambition of EDC, and to deliver a solution which ticks all the boxes within the budget allocation that was agreed under the last administration, I think is a great achievement for everybody. And a state-of-the-art civic centre is needed in Penrith, is demonstrated by the buy-in of the other partners. So my thanks to everyone involved, and I'm sure the executive will add their thanks. Any further comments, anybody, or shall we move to a vote? Thank you. So I think, Mrs. Tramble, I think we're ready to vote on this. I think, is it too untheatrical if we go to a general assent?
No, I'm quite content for votes to be taken like that, if members are.
Okay. Is everybody happy with is everybody generally assenting to general assent? Okay, Mary Robinson isn't there, but I'm sure she is. Yes, yes. Okay, here we go. So would you like to announce the result? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Given that no one has verbalised that they disagree with the recommendation, we take that as passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 7, which is the A66 performance agreement, which is falls in my portfolio. So the A66 planning performance agreement. So the purpose of the report is to set out the purpose of having a planning performance agreement. It seeks executive approval for the agreement to enter into a planning performance agreement with Cumbria County Council and Highways England. It requests delegated authority be given to officers to enable timely responses to be provided to Highways England on the development consent order preparation and submission, and on any required changes to the PPA planning performance agreement. So the planning performance agreement, as set out in, is repeated in 3.1. It's an agreement between a local planning authority or planning authorities and a planning applicant for the management of complex development proposals within the planning process. And the project in question is, of course, the dualling of the A66. The authority, us, can charge for the time it spends in undertaking such work. Such charge must be on a not-for-profit basis. So 3.3, the PPA covers the planning aspects of the A66 programme, including providing input into pre-application discussions, responding to consultations, planning policy development, and supporting communities so that they can understand how and when they can engage in the planning process. The report tells us that Cumbria County Council and EDC have been negotiating a mechanism to claim back their costs for undertaking PPA activities, and that additional external assistance will be required to provide sufficient input into this nationally significant infrastructure project. And the report describes the proposed mechanism for procurement and appointment. The report sets out in detail at 3.6 the roles of EDC and CCC and their function at 3.7. At 3.8 is set out the purpose of the PPA and what it will enable. Moving on to the implications at 8, financial and resources. So 8.1.2, it's the intention that additional finance will be required to appoint external consultancy report to assist both councils. And a separate arrangement will be made with Highways England that seeks to compensate both councils for additional costs generated through this piece of work. It is recognised, though, that there will be an additional burden on officers responding to such a significant development. So if I can, I think at this point, I think I'd like to ask for any questions before I make the recommendations. I mean, I suppose I do have a question, which is which is there's slightly worrying language. It's recognised, though, that there will be an additional burden on officers responding to such a significant development. And I was wondering if this is the same burden. It implies that this isn't the same burden as the as will be remedied through consultant, and I was wondering, you know, what the remedy might be for this burden, or is it is the language? So I don't know. I don't know if anybody can reassure me that the additional burden on officers is something that's being accounted for to be not a burden.
Chair, if I may, it's Oliver.
Thank you.
Just to say that if we can get the financial agreement sorted between ourselves and Highways England and Cumbria County Council, that's going to be the big mitigating action that will allow that burden, which will be present on officers, to be reduced to a more acceptable amount, so we can still provide a really good input into this, what is a nationally significant infrastructure project. So the funding that's attached, what will be attached to this PPA, is the key to all this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, in that case, I shall make the recommendations. If you just, there we are. So recommendations. 1, that approval is given for Eden District Council to enter into a planning performance agreement with Cumbria County Council and Highways England. 2, delegate authority to the Assistant Director Development and Assistant Director Legal and Democratic Services to respond, in consultation with the lead executive member, on responses to the Development Consent Order preparation for the A66 project. And there are a raft of people offering to second this. So I shall choose Councillor Roddle, if you would like to.
I can second this, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything they wish to say? So shall we take a vote on this? Is it too untheatrical to have general assent? No? Okay, could you put your cameras on and indicate your approval of this? Thank you very much. So Mrs. Tremble, could you just verbalise that so I can move on with her in peace? Thank you.
Absolutely, Chair. By way of general assent, no members had indicated that they have any issues with it, and so general assent is taken and the resolutions have been passed.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 8, the use of National Leisure Recovery Funding. And this is again in Councillor Greenwood's portfolio. So please, Councillor Greenwood, could you present the report for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the use of National Leisure Recovery Funding, item 8. And the purpose of this report is to seek approval to use funding awarded to the Council through the National Leisure Recovery Fund and to include it in the budget so that we can continue to support our leisure operator, Greenwich Leisure. Since the report was published, we have been awarded a top-up to the original grant of £5,493, making the total grant now £85,493. The budget monitoring reports throughout this financial year have highlighted a significant overspend in leisure services caused by the COVID-19 impacts on the operation of the Council's leisure centres. A National Leisure Recovery Fund was set up to assist authorities in supporting their leisure providers, and the Council was successful in its initial bid, which, with top-up, is now £85,493. Contractual arrangements have been put in place between the Council and the Fund. However, executive approval is required to use the funding and amend the budget. I'd like to make the recommendations that executive approve the use of £85,493 funding awarded to the Council through the National Leisure Recovery Fund, and to approve the increase in the budget for leisure centres to allow the funding to be allocated to GLL. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Greenwood, and apologies, Councillor Greenwood. Does anyone have anything they wish to say? And so I see that Councillor Sharp has agreed to second the proposal, so please would you verbalise that?
Yes, please. I'd like to second this.
Thank you. That's seconded, and we have any further comments? No. So shall we again go to general assent? And I'm informed that we don't need to show ourselves that unless you make a noise, we assume that you agree. So that's fine. So
thank you, Chair. Given that no members have indicated verbally that they disagree with the recommendations in front of us, we take that as general assent and the resolution is passed.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 9, the executive forward plan. And this is my report to present, excuse me. Okay. So the purpose of this report is to agree the executive forward plan for the municipal year 2020 to 21, which is hereby published. The forward plan is set out at Appendix 1. Forward plan sets out the timeline for executive decisions, including key decisions and council decisions, which are intended to be taken at Eden District Council throughout the municipal year. So as we're agreeing the content, if I could just ask you to turn to Appendix 1. There aren't actually any council decisions included in Appendix 1, and the list is quite short as there is not much of the year left. But if I could just ask you to cast your eye over the items for April's executive, which for members of the public you can read if you look at the published agenda. Recommendation. It is recommended that the executive agree the forward plan as attached at Appendix 1. And do I have a seconder for that? I haven't asked if anybody wishes to discuss it. Does anybody wish to discuss it? I'll take that as a no.
Could I come in?
Yes.
I was just checking to see whether we needed to have the housing strategy included on the 20th of April, because we haven't got it in there at the moment, and I know we're wanting to bring it forward as soon as possible.
We can check on that, Councillor Derbyshire, and if it does need to be added, then we can add it to the document.
Thank you. It's just useful to know, to be reassured.
Thank you very much. Has anybody else got any concerns? And I see that Councillor Ruddle has offered to second it.
Yes, I'll second, Chair.
Thank you very much. And does anybody else have anything they wish to say? And if not, can we go to general assent again? And tell Councillor Ruddle you do not need to display yourself.
Thank you, Chair. From that silence, no one has disagreed, and so we take the recommendation as taken and the resolution is passed.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 10 is the housing and homelessness services. Sorry, I'm not reading this report. It just says housing and homelessness services. Is that what it? Yes. Agenda item 10, housing and homelessness services, and this is in the housing and health portfolio, which is Councillor Derbyshire, who please would you present this report? Thank you very much.
Right, just clicking on the right part. Right. As stated, this report details the contractual terms of agreement for the housing advice and homelessness services provided by Eden Housing Association in 2021. Part of it is retrospective because we didn't get it formally approved for the contract awarded to Eden Housing Association for 2021, and we wanted to also approve the contract for 21-22. So it is recommended that the executive retrospectively approves the contract award to Eden Housing Association for housing advice and homelessness service for 2021 as set out in Appendix 1. Approve the contract awarded to Eden Housing Association for housing advice and homelessness services for 21-22 as set out in Appendix 2, and approve the budget for homelessness and housing advice services as detailed in Appendix 3. As noted in the report, the appendices are confidential, so if we wanted to discuss those, we'd have to go into non-public discussions. But we are going to have additional costs, as has been put forward in 4.13 of the report. Due to COVID, we've had a large increase in homelessness, people struggling due to reductions in incomes, and we are expecting the issues to get worse in the coming year due to eviction bans. I think it states in this report that it was ending in March, but that's been put back again further. But we are still expecting that when this cliff finally happens of the eviction ban being lifted, that we are going to be dealing with a lot of people who are going to be struggling and needing help with their accommodation. So this has had a forecast put to it. We're hoping that we'll get some funding from the government to help support this work. But we are putting forward this budget and for previous ones and for this future one, and we were hoping we were going to approve it. If you've got any complicated questions, I will put it to Robert Doherty because he has expertise. The first question away would be whether anybody wants to actually, if anybody wants to actually ask any questions, and if we do have anything to do with the appendices, we're going to have to go into closed session. Apologies, trying to switch my phone off.
Thank you very much, Councillor Derbyshire. So we had a straw poll before the meeting as to whether anybody knew that they were going to have any want to go into the next session. Does anybody need to refer to the confidential information? No. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Derbyshire or for Mr. Doherty? In that case, could I have a seconder? Do we have a seconder? Let's Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sharp, please, would you like to second this?
Yeah, I'd like to second this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So has anybody got any comments that they wish to make? I think, you know, once again, I'm, you know, really grateful to everybody concerned, our officers, members, and Eden Housing Association, and all the other people who have been so sedulous in making such difficult situations for people. The solutions are difficult as well as the problems are difficult in the current COVID situation, and everybody must be, the officers must be very tired, and I'd like to thank them very much. Anybody else got anything they'd like to say? Good. Well, in that case, I think we have proposed it, we seconded it, we've decided we don't need to go into closed session. So once again, let us go by general assent, and please speak up if you have any problems.
Chair, given that no one has verbalised that they disagree with the three recommendations as they are set out in the report, I think that we can take that it's a collective agreement and the resolution is passed. Thank you very much.
So there's just a slight change to the published addendum. I'm bringing forward item 12. Any other items? So I have no items of urgent business, and nobody has informed me of any for me to take up. Agenda item 11, the date of the next scheduled meeting. The date of the next scheduled meeting is confirmed as the 20th of April 2021. And since we are not proceeding to closed session, the meeting of March's Eden District Council Executive is closed. Thank you very much, everybody.